I think the beauty of this technology is that it really gives the tools for artists to scale their work globally without depending on, traditional finance infrastructure. Where if you're an artist that wanted to sell paintings, $100 million worth of volume of paintings, you would need galleries, lawyers, like legal support in every jurisdiction in the world. And that's just a huge ask, right? For an up and coming artist. You really need to build up to that level. But with blockchain, those rules are enforced with software and they're unbreakable. So somebody that, catches the right idea at the right time can, spend, maybe a day, maybe it took him like years to build this. But if they release it on chain, they're guaranteed that the financial support that they need is already there. And it's free, right? And the code and kind of the infrastructure that is based on blockchain is designed to, really give as much value to the artist as possible and extract the least amount of value from the process. That's really the goal of this technology, is like, how do you eliminate the sand in the gears? In a lot of ways, Solana is, ideologically very close to every other blockchain. It's a decentralized ledger that records every event that happens on it. The differences in terms of like the architecture, how it's built, is that it's designed for speed. It's a technology. And when I think of technology, I think of Moore's Law, Intel, the folks that, build chips that are faster and faster every 2 years. If you're building a technology, then as those guys make progress, your technology should get cheaper and faster. And this is the core thesis of how we architected the whole thing, is that every 2 years, when Intel, AMD ships a faster and cheaper chip, then the network itself gets twice as performant, has more bandwidth, more capacity, and the cost to users should drop accordingly. And that's really the thesis of it. Can we build a network that extracts the least amount of value from the applications running on top of it? And the rest is a high performance operating system that, in my case, I spent my career at Qualcomm building, Brew and a bunch of mobile operating systems. A lot of the ideas that went into developing those are now being developed on top of Solana. And we see it as kind of a technology that is very well aligned to the tools and development practices that were prevalent at places like Apple, Intel, Google, and stuff like that. The challenge, I think, it really hits teams that are trying to build and innovate in the space. So, like the example that Kevin brought up, this idea that every, at 401, they check all the positions and check leverage and manage risk. 2 guys built this as a smart contract. It runs on Solana. Those checks happen every 400 milliseconds, and they balance a bunch of lenders and a bunch of borrowers without ever taking custody of the funds. It's just a bunch of software. So what does this team do in terms of regulation, right? Like, how do they define the risk for themselves as founders? Where should they base their product out of? Like, which jurisdiction? So if you're a startup and you just raised, a really successful $1.5 million seed raise, which is massive amounts of runway for 2-3 people, and the compliance in the US is going to cost you $3 million. Compliance somewhere else is going to be much, much cheaper. Like, those folks are making those choices every day. And that's really, I think, the risks aren't the risks aren't that these products are not going to get built. They're going to get built because they're awesome. It's that they're going to get built elsewhere. And that's really, me as somebody that's been living in the United States since my family were, refugees from the Soviet Union in 91. That's really sad for me to see. Like, I just want all this stuff to happen here. I mean, in 10 years, imagine a world with more than 1 billion people with self-custody, with cryptography, that hold their own keys and understand how to use them at the same level of people understand how to browse the internet. That world is going to be as unpredictable as, the internet in the 90s trying to predict that, sharing pictures of their cats is going to be worth $1 trillion. It's just something that I feel will revolutionize, like Jeremy said, every industry that we know today. Communities will never need advertisement to self-monetize. folks can communicate and make, financial decisions without any intermediaries at like global scale. So what you see today with 10 million users in crypto, it's really going to be a dramatic change.